Hey everybody. So today I wanted to talk about unsolvable mysteries and one specific unsolvable mystery that has, I wouldn't say it's haunted me, but has crossed my mind from time to time. And when it does, kind of drives me nuts. Um, and that is the unsolvable mystery of who is JR. So I'll get into that in a little bit. First of all, I just want to talk a little bit about unanswerable questions, unsolvable mysteries. So I think my generation, I won't specifically say Generation X, I'll say Generation X plus some portion of boomers, plus some portion of millennials have a very unique perspective because a lot of us grew up like playing in the yard with like little green army men and Hot Wheels and sometimes just a stick. It was very low tech, and we grew up to see like the birth of the internet and dialing into AOL up to high speed internet up to I've got high speed internet on my phone all the way up to like the birth of like AI for at home use. And so I think we have a unique perspective, and the amount of unanswerable questions has gone down dramatically. If you start to watch a movie that's in black and white, you just wait. Eventually, they all seem to lead to a private detective on some kind of stakeout, because that was like the way you had to get information. If you didn't know the right people, there was always some kind of stakeout, and that had to be the case all the way up until the 90s. I mean 1987 they actually made a movie called Stakeout. They're staking out everywhere. And then, other than, sometimes follow somebody around to see if they're having an affair, I don't even know what a private investigator does now. Like, get on Chat GPT for somebody. So, it was very easy to stump people back in the day. And I have one story that comes to mind that is just hilarious how easy it was to stump me on this. So I used to throw a lot of parties, and I'd invite people over. I'd just put the word out, "Hey, I'm gonna have a party tonight," and some people would show up. And there were these two kind of dirtbag looking dudes, kind of look like they were from the cast of Sons of Anarchy, and they were from Stephenville. And I don't know why they would come to Granbury, and I don't know how I knew them, but they would show up to my party sometimes, and they're very cool guys. And they'd come in, and we'd all bro hug and talk for a minute, and then they would just kind of hang out in the corner and smoke a bunch of cigarettes by themselves and hang out. And they were always welcome at my house, and I knew their first and last names. I don't know them now, but I did at the time, and I don't know what network, how we crossed paths. I don't know where I met them. I don't know anything. They just showed up. And one night they showed up at my house with this third guy, and he looked like Dimebag Darrell from Pantera. He was just like this kind of long hair guy with goatee, a little bit older than me. And I happened to be playing guitar, and just kind of everybody's like throwing out requests and sitting around the couch. And I'm just sitting there playing away, and he walks in, and everybody else, they're just talking and hanging out, and I'm just like background music. And he like pulls up a chair and sticks his face into my guitar and is just watching everything I'm doing. And of course, young ego, I'm like, oh, I got a fan, and I'm sitting there playing. And he made a couple of comments that made me know that he was a guitarist, because he's like, oh, I see a lot of hammer-ons and pull-offs. You grew up listening to a lot of Eddie Van Halen, huh? And so I figured out he plays, and then I put the guitar down, and then I was like, hey, you want to play? And then he took my guitar and sullied it with the juiciest, most amazing guitar solo that's ever been played on an instrument I owned. I was just sitting there with my jaw on the floor. And I mean, he was ripping between classical to metal to blues to rock and everything in between. And I was just like, okay, I'm not worthy. But he seemed to really like what I was doing too. And he put the guitar down, and we start talking and we just hit it off. And I'm like, oh my God, we got to jam together. We got to get a band going. And I mean, I had it all worked out in my head that, you know, we're going to be our version of Megadeth, and he's going to be the Marty Friedman that plays all the really technical solos, and I can be the Mustaine playing the more conventional solos and all this stuff. So that was the plan. The next day, I lost his phone number, and I knew his first name. I knew he probably lived in Stephenville, and I knew he was friends with those two guys who showed up at my house every time I threw a party. So what do I do with that information? So I figured I'll just ask those guys next time I throw a party and they show up. Well, guess what? I never saw them again the rest of my life. Just whatever, you know, whatever drew them to my house no longer drew them there. So they never showed up. So without them, I asked around a few people. Nobody seemed to know how I knew them. They knew about as much as I did. So with that information, what do I do with it? Do I go to Jake and Dorothy's restaurant in Stephenville and just start yelling out Danny? Like, you're stumped. You know, I mean, it was like, that's all it took. You know, I hoped to run into the guy at some point. I never did. And the entire world is worse off for the band that we were going to create never getting off the ground. So I apologize that we never got to do. I mean, it was going to be like Death Clock, right? You know, just it was going to be epic, but yeah, never happened. So anyway, that's all it took to stump us back in the day. Everything I just said with that bit of information would have been solved on Facebook in about 1 minute flat, because I would have been connected to those guys if I had Facebook. But let's just say I still did. I would have seen those guys. I would have been connected to them. Everybody uses their real names on Facebook. They would have been connected to him. I would have found him. I would have messaged him, and the earth would, you know, slightly change its axis from the music we were going to create. So, but no, you know, back then you just were stumped. So, you know, and the only other thing that cracks me up, there was a guy I worked with that he was this gigantic guy, and he was at least 400 pounds, and he was full of crap. Like, but I never could quite prove it. You know, he would say stuff and I'm like, oh, I don't think that's right, you know? And so I remember at one point he said that he played in the Cotton Bowl in '79 for Texas against Notre Dame, against Joe Montana. And I'm like, and even that was like in the 90s. And I just wanted to figure out, like, how do I just prove? I wasn't gonna like confront him with it. I mean, probably sit on me, but I just wanted to know. Just let me know for sure that this guy is as full of crap as I think he is. And I you know, he knew the score. He knew the names of like all the players on the teams. I never could figure it out. Maybe a couple of years ago, 25, 30 years after knowing that guy, I saw somebody who looked just like him. And I was like, you know what? Remember, he used to say he played in the '79 Cotton Bowl. So I looked up the Texas roster. Guess who's not on it? That guy. I knew it, but I couldn't prove it. So anyway, we have so much more access to information. So now let me give you a story where all of that doesn't matter. It's not enough. All right, so I was going off to college. I was going to be a freshman in college, and I was going to be living in the dorms. I was the baby of the family, and my brothers were much, much older than me. So my parents couldn't quite remember if there was going to be a dresser in the dorm room. And once again, we're very disconnected. There's no internet around, so there wasn't like a forum where you just be like, hey, do they have dressers in the dorm? That would have been easy to figure out, and they would have said, yes, there's dressers there. You don't need it. But my parents just decided, hey, let's run over to the antique store in Granbury and let's just find you a dresser just in case. And if you don't use it, then we'll just keep it at the house. We could always use another piece of furniture. Like, okay, so we went to this antique shop and we got this old dresser. I ended up not taking it to the dorm room, I believe. I believe that it went with me to a couple of homes I lived in briefly, and then ended up back at my parents' house. And I think when I was about 20, this thing, it kind of sat across from the toilet, and it had like extra, mom's makeup and like some extra stuff for guests or whatever. And I opened a bottom drawer and it fell out. And when it fell out, it flipped over and I could see some writing in pencil on it. And it said, JR died in Bastogne, Belgium, December either 17th or 19th, 1945. I will love him for the rest of my life. And then it was signed like either CK or GK. One thing, something greasy that was in the drawer had seeped through, so I couldn't tell if it was December 17th or 19th, and the initials, I couldn't tell if it was a C or a G on the first letter, and the second letter kind of looked like a K and it kind of looked like a B. So basically, the person who wrote it, their initials, there's too many variables. It could be multiple things. But JR was clear, and the date, the month, December 1945, and it was very clear, Bastogne, Belgium. So being that I had taken history and had kind of paid attention, the first thing I thought was World War II, Bastogne, Battle of the Bulge. And I remembered it took place in the winter, but that was all I remembered. So for a long time, I was like, oh wow, this person was in love with this person who died, who was named JR and died in the Battle of the Bulge. So that was what I thought at first. But then as I got older and I would like get some books and I've got some interest in World War II, I realized, oh, wait a second, it says December 1945. World War II was actually over. The Battle of the Bulge was December 1944. So now we have this next variable. Is the date right? Did they get the date wrong, that it was actually December 1944? Or did they die in 1945? And because then you think about, it could have been like post-war effort, it could have been a medic, it never said it was a soldier. I think when you see killed in Bastogne, Belgium, you would assume it's a soldier, but what if it wasn't? And then the next piece of the mystery that really interested me was, why was this written secretly on the bottom of a drawer where nobody would ever find it? It's like, was this her sister's husband or boyfriend? Was this some guy she was dating from the wrong side of the tracks that she wasn't supposed to be in love with? Was the person that wrote this actually a guy? I've heard there actually were gay people in the world before 1980 outside of California. I think that was a joke. Yeah, I don't know. And it was just like, so if the more I thought about it, the more it kind of drove me nuts, because, and I actually got to the point where I looked up for people. Now, if you think about JR, that can mean first initial, last initial, or it could be someone named, James Ray something, and they went by JR. That could be, what they went by as their first name. So I actually looked through the Battle of the Bulge, everyone who died there, just in case they got the year wrong. Because you got to also think, I'm looking at this in the 90s. Like, they could have written that in 1946, or they could have written it in 1989 and just been reminiscing, So I don't know how long that had been there. And eventually we moved out of the house and just left the dresser there. So it's just kind of lost to history, but it's one of those things we'll never know. So anyway, I wrote a song about this, and I think I wanted to talk about it just because I don't know if I'm a prolific enough songwriter for this to really have the oomph that it needed to have. I started writing lyrics, really taking it seriously in about 2019. So I just want to talk about it because it's something that has just haunted me forever, and I figured I'd share the misery. So anyway, there you go.
My final summer paycheck on the dresser for